All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So I just wanted to say from the start that this is not an April Fool's video or anything like that. It's kind of like a Jack Talks or a Real Talk or something like that. It may be a little bit longer than the usual length of my commentaries. So for those of you guys that are interested, I hope you stick around for this conversation. And if not, I totally get it. It's a little bit different. But during stream yesterday, or should I say last night or whatnot, as of the time of this recording, or hell, even the day before. One of my viewers asked me, one of the people in chat asked me, like, they figured out that I did this, like I mentioned, that I've been doing it for 9 years or whatnot. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be my 9-year anniversary here on YouTube. And, they kind of asked me something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, on how long am I going to keep doing this? Or do I see myself continuing to do this in the near future or something like that? And that got me thinking. And then earlier, as of hours ago, Blame Truth kind of posted a video. And in this particular video, he had also mentioned like how people have started YouTube before him, but yet quit before him, and then started after him, and yet quit before him. So, and he's been doing it for 15 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. That, I mean, 6 years is a long time, whether it's in life or whether it's in YouTube as well. But to think that he's got 6 years, that he's got 6 years on me is kind of crazy to think about when you think about it. And in terms of where YouTube was back then and content creation was back then, I mean, I think he even posted a screenshot of like the amount of viewers that he got when he first started posting videos, which were really impressive numbers. Numbers that I don't even get consistently after doing this for about 9 years now. Of course, and again, it was a different time. There were a lot less content creators than there are now, and it has evolved over time. Just like gaming has evolved, just like what people want to do for a career has evolved. Just how there's more jobs now from home, and that's going to continue to evolve and grow rapidly in terms of what people do from home. So whether it's called YouTube for yourself, or, let's say you're working as an entity of another online company or something like that, it is at the end of the day work from home. It all just depends on what you're specifically doing. Now, obviously, for a lot of people, the dream job is to be able to do YouTube and to do streaming and stuff like that. And hopefully one day hit success to where you can either make it a side gig or a full-time gig, or who knows, you might, hit the jackpot and be like one of the guys that's like some of the biggest content creators / streamers out there that are making salaries that make, neurosurgeons blush. You know what I mean? Because in comparison, I mean, neurosurgeons do very well, but in comparison though, the guys that are making some of the biggest amounts of income when it comes to streaming and YouTube and all that stuff, they make insane numbers, man. That's just the truth, So for a lot of people, they want to do this as a career, and when that becomes a normal part of life, all of a sudden it's going to take over. And I see this as getting big, but at the same, like way bigger than it is now. But at the same time, I also see it getting very I don't know, I don't know how to fully explain it, but almost chaotic, so to speak, if that's the proper word. Because when it comes to the internet, it's a little bit different than real life, right? I mean, people will say things on the internet that they don't dare say to people, let alone in front of their face and all that kind of stuff. So it's a whole different world here on the internet. It's kind of like it's almost like comparing high school to the real world, right? And but the thing is, with the internet, there's a lot more. There's a little bit less of a limitation. It's pretty crazy how technology and everything else is evolving. Now, the reason why I talk about this is because, well, in the last 9 years, I've literally been watching it grow before my eyes. At first, it was just as a person who just enjoyed going on YouTube and just looking stuff up on YouTube or whatnot. And then once I found out there's a community in gaming, let alone Call of Duty, which was a game that I ended up really liking, and I became aware of the Call of Duty community, and then I took it to another level or whatnot, which ended up inspiring me to make a YouTube channel. If I was just a little bit more educated back in the day, I mean, I don't even know if I'd be doing this kind of channel. It might have been like a multi-content type of channel, or it might have been something completely different in terms of martial arts. If I knew any better, I might have started a martial arts channel, and I would have just, my own program that I've written, I might have put it up on here on YouTube or something like that. I might have had an idea to flow that way. But But yeah, the big question is like, am I going to want to be a part of what social media and YouTube and all that kind of stuff is going to be like in the upcoming years? The answer is I don't know. And a lot of times it also depends on life happenings, on things that happen in life as well. Because especially if you're not making any money doing this and you're just doing it as a hobby, as a fun sort of thing, using it as a way to express yourself or whatnot, and have your own little spot in the social media platform of your choice or whatnot in the way that you want to do it. If you're not making any money, it's there is a certain level of freedom to it, but at the same time, there's kind of a give and take, because like for a lot of people, for instance, the fact that they are able to make either a part-time income or a full-time income doing this whole YouTube thing, it makes it easier, let alone it could be a pain in the ass if you're not enjoying it as much anymore, but it does make it easier for you to stick around with doing what you're doing, right? Because let's just be real here. Yes, YouTube and streaming and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like to do that full time. And I know that it is a lot harder than it sounds, because a lot of people say, oh, you're just playing video games for a living and all that kind of stuff. I will tell you that I only have little firsthand experience in this, because there was a very short period of time to where I had free time on my hands, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say, I'm just going to live. I'm just going to do this as if I did it for a living. And I was streaming I think I did it for a week, if not the better part of a week. And I was streaming for at least 6 hours a day or something like that. And then I was making a video, sometimes 2 videos a day or something like that. I vaguely remember doing this. I don't remember all the details, which just goes to show you that it didn't last very long. And I realized that despite the fact that it was what it was, and I was playing video games and making videos and stuff like that, I quickly realized that I am a person that, even though I enjoy playing video games and even though I enjoy making videos and stuff like that, it's not something that I want to do all day, every day. It's not something that I want to do, for a certain amount of hours of the day, right? But in order to have that kind of level of commitment, you have to be willing to do that for a lot of hours. Now, granted, in terms of the kind of content that I make and the kind of content that other people make that do something similar to what I do in terms of the commentaries and stuff like that, it really doesn't take much. It only takes about, I don't know, for me, 30 minutes or so, give or take, maybe an hour on average out of my day to basically get a video up, making the thumbnail, doing the editing, whether it's minor or slightly more, and getting the footage together if I need to do anything like that. So to get that up, and then obviously to upload it and all that, and go from there. I mean, that's, that is the easier side. If that's what you're doing, then obviously but even that can become mentally taxing sometimes, because if the content that you're creating ends up being negative because of, whatever it is that you're covering, if it's a whole bunch of negative news or something like that, it wears on you after a while. Even though you're only doing it for like, a certain period of time, it's kind of your world if it's like your full-time or part-time thing or whatnot, especially if it's your full-time thing. It kind of becomes your world. You kind of have to know about it. Sometimes you even have to do research. So it requires you to be involved. And if you're despising what's happening in terms of the kind of content that you're creating, in terms of what you're covering and what your viewership is there to see, it could really, really be hard on you. It really can. And again, despite the fact that I don't do this for like the way like a Nero Cinema does it, or the way a Blame Truth does it or whatnot, and just to name a few, doesn't mean that I don't exactly know, because I've been on here long enough to know and to understand, and I've seen many things as well. It's like I know enough. I've been here long enough to where I know enough. Obviously, I could always learn more, but in terms of what content creation can be like, in terms of what people fantasize about compared to what it actually is, it's not always all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, sure, I can understand how it can be the dream job and all that kind of stuff, but I guarantee you that a lot of full-time YouTubers, even the ones that are making, 6 figures a month, and yes, you heard me correctly, the big guys that are making 6 figures a month, those guys right there, I'm sure, I'm sure that they would love just to take like a few days off, or a week off every now and then, or just a few days off every week. Like take a day off, a couple of days out of the week or something like that, right? Like a normal human being, and only put in about, 8 hours a day of work like a normal human being. And again, for a lot of people, even though they enjoy doing it, uh, some people don't like to, how do I put this? Like they don't want to be forced to either play a game or to just sit in an area for too long or whatnot or whatever it is, you know. Or sometimes you just might not feel like it. It's like, okay, today I feel like grinding, and then tomorrow they might not feel the same way. So imagine feeling like you don't want to do it on this particular day because you're just not feeling it, but you have to do it anyway, right? Because that's how you make your bread and that's how you get ahead. Even if you're making six figures, you know, that's the thing. It's like a lot of these, I've noticed that a lot of these guys, including the big names, right? They're treating this as if it's not going to last forever, right? Whether it's because they become irrelevant or whether it's because things change or whatever it is, right? They're treating it as if it's going to disappear, you know, and none of us know whether it will or not, but that's how they're treating it, right? So that way they can end up with the most amount of money possible in their savings. So that way they can either not work for the rest of their lives or, you know, do something else that they have in mind to do with the money that they've ended up saving, right? So they're kind of treating it like that. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like you've found this, you know, gold mine or this cave full of treasure, and you want to get all the treasure and get the hell out of there before anybody else discovers it, so that way you don't have to share it with anybody else, right? Or if you do share it, you're sharing it with the least amount of people, so that way you get more for yourself. That's literally the kind of analogy that it appears that these people have when it comes to YouTube or whatnot. And hell, people even have that at work or whatnot. If I was guaranteed, you know, that I would be getting, like, the harder I work during an hour phase and the more I'm able to do during that hour for a company, and within every hour my hourly wage would go up depending on how many X's I've crossed, so to speak. You could bet your ass that I'd be working my ass off to cross as many X's as possible during that hour to get the most amount of money in my pocket, right? You can bet your ass that I'd be doing it that way. And there are jobs that actually do that. I remember I was watching one of the episodes of the Optic podcast, and I don't watch them very often, but whenever I do, I remember Hex was talking about when he worked for corporate America or something like that. Like he was making some serious bank for the things that he would be able to do. And once he found out that he'd be getting these bonuses and this extra income, the more that he'd be able to get done. He was working like crazy, and they absolutely loved him, and I don't blame him. And in terms of the kind of money that he would bring in, I'd be like, holy crap, that'd be amazing. Are you kidding? I'd be doing the exact same thing. So, and there's nothing really wrong with being motivated by money, to be honest. There really isn't, as long as you don't get greedy, right? But that's a very, very hard thing, right? That's very difficult. Like, I remember, like, thankfully I don't have greed as a problem. I've got other issues that I have a weakness for, but greed, thankfully, is not one of them. But I would say that the deeper you go in terms of, you know, reaching those financial goals, you're kind of playing with fire, and it's always a matter of time before you get burned, right? The longer you play, the more likely you are to get burned. So I think that's what's kind of going on. It's like, you know, greed is starting to play a factor because, you know, how much is enough is the big question, right? And just like we like good food and stuff like that, it's very easy to fall for that trap of, like, you know, it's like you love your treats, right? So it's like, ooh, now you get to have more and blah blah blah. So I get it. It's very difficult, you know, and that's why I try my best not to judge, especially if I don't have a particular problem, because when you start to judge, it's like, well, you've got, you know, you have no right to say anything if you haven't been there firsthand. You know, it's one thing to hear about it, and it's another thing to actually experience it firsthand. Just like having a pizza. Nobody could tell you how good a pizza really, you're never going to know how good a pizza really is until you actually try it. No matter how much you hear about it, no matter how much you smell it, see it, and all that stuff, you know, experiencing that pizza, you know, that good ass pizza is what's going to give you that ultimate experience, to where it's like, okay, now you can talk about it and you've earned the right to talk about it. And yeah, so because you've experienced it firsthand. If you haven't experienced it firsthand, so therefore you have no right talking about it. So so to a certain degree, I kind of wanted to get my own input in terms of what I learned from doing this and watching other people. And again, the big difference is, obviously, I'm not doing it full time by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, and at the same time, I'm not making any money from it. You know, and one of the reasons, I will admit, that there is an element of luck when it comes to YouTube. There's no doubt about it, especially now, since there's a lot more people that are taking little itty bitty bits of this pie that has pretty much always been the same size that we call YouTube, right? There just happens to be more people. And, you really have to be unique. You really have to be consistent, and you really have to be smart in order to be able to earn yourself that bigger piece of the pie. And yes, you do also have to be lucky as well. So it's a matter of all those things in combination. And over the years, I was just a guy that was posting stuff online. I was just putting stuff online, and that was it. And I thought that's what it was, but there's a little bit more to it than that. I've learned over the years that there's more to it than that. There's a right way to do it. It goes everything from the title of your video. How do you title your video to be sincere, but without being clickbait? And hell, there's even people out there that are that have grown to be where they are because of clickbait, and it is what it is, So it's like, how do you, in terms of how you edit your thumbnail, where the text is and all that kind of stuff, the title of your video plays a really, really big role. How you describe your video in the description plays a big role. The length of the video and everything else that goes with it. So, and in terms of what you're covering on your channel. So there is a method to the madness. I don't think anybody completely understands the YouTube algorithm like 100%. But a lot of people that have become successful have learned a lot about how the YouTube algorithm works. And they basically, let's put it this way, guys, everybody that does YouTube, or should I say the majority of people that do YouTube for the most part, there's no other better way to say this, and we're going to keep it real here. We're pretty much whores to this algorithm, so to speak, right? It's about sticking to what it is that you're doing and what your audience is there to see, being consistent with it, so that way the algorithm feeds that out. Because again, if you want to be a multi-creator, you either have to do it from the start, or you have to basically get big enough in terms of what you were doing in the first place, and then you have a big enough audience to where the algorithm kind of still continues to feed you stuff. It might, maybe you won't get as much consistency in terms of numbers at first, and then later on what ends up happening is you get more consistency as you start to feed that algorithm new data. And the thing is, because your numbers are already high as it is and your average viewership is already much above average as it is, the algorithm kind of takes attention to that, and you're still going to get a good amount of attention that will allow you to grow. You're going to take a few steps back though, but at the same time, you'll end up being a multi-creator, and then you'll be at where you were before you made this slight change. That's one of the things that I've noticed with a few content creators that I watched specifically, and as well as some of the things that I've learned from even content creators that actually specialize in trying to get people to grow their YouTube channels because they understand how the algorithm works. There's actually a few channels that are dedicated to that. So, so at the end of the day, in terms of me personally, it really just depends on a lot of things, really. It depends on my mood. It depends on where gaming is going to be. It depends on whether or not I want to change things up around here. I honestly don't, nobody can predict the future. And at the same time, it all depends on life. And there's been other things that I've wanted to do with the channel, of course, as well. I'm not going to lie. I would love to have, I've always wanted to kind of do a podcast or whatnot. You wouldn't be seeing anything except for gameplay though, or something like that, because as of right now, I don't, because of where I am right now in my life, I don't have all the right pieces in place, as well as a partner to do it with on a consistent basis to where we can make it happen. But at the same time, it's not necessarily about that. You don't have to do that. It's about just getting started. You don't have to have the fanciest equipment. It's nice to have, but it's not a necessity, at least not yet. And then when you get to a certain point, then okay. For the first 6 years of this, of me doing this whole thing out of 9, 6 or 7 years out of 9, I can tell you wholeheartedly that I was operating on very dated software. I was actually lucky to be recording videos in the first place on a cheap then $400 Walmart laptop, but somehow my Elgato worked with it. It was really skipping in real time, but whenever I hit that record button though, it was recording normally, because when I played it back, it played back normally. So I knew the recording thing was good enough, even though it's not to what I have now, but I was starting out on really dated hardware. And of course you got your blue snowball. I didn't know how to filter background noise and stuff like that. I'm running 3 filters right now, and you can still hear it because of where I live, and there's nothing really I can do about that. In terms of where my recording setup is, I really can't do anything about that. I'm sorry. But those 3 filters make a difference, and if you add in a little background music, it helps even more. But whenever I record at times like this, which is past midnight, it's a little bit easier and a lot cleaner. So, and then of course you get your, I was recording off of a Blue Snowball at first, and now I'm doing a Yeti X Pro. But at the end of the day, though, the content overall has remained the same. I may be covering a different game, or I might be doing slightly a little bit of different content, but the content has pretty much remained the same. The only difference is that streams are a little bit more consistent, and streams are, better quality. I remember when I first got the PC that I got the better part of 2 years ago or whatnot. Like, I remember one of my viewers was like, "Wow, the picture looks so much better." I'm like, "Thank you. I just got this PC." So, but yeah, that was the thing. And that was that was the biggest reason overall why I got it in the first place, because I wanted my videos to edit faster. I wanted my videos to look better, and I wanted to stream. So, and I wanted to be able to have more flexibility and the freedom to do it. I won't forget to this day. Like, your average video used to take me on that old ass laptop, or even my friend's old PC that he gave to me for a low price, which I ended up using up until this PC for like maybe a year and a half or so, that I even streamed on, by the way. But it was like a miracle. But even then, on that old hardware, my videos would take like a 10-minute video would take the better part of an hour, if not an hour, to edit, or excuse me, to render. And now, now I can, depending on the quality of the video, let's say I'm doing 1080-60, which is usually the goal. Sometimes there are some exceptions here and there. But I remember the first time I edited a video, and I still remember to this day, it took 3 minutes. I was like, wow. And in my mind, I was like, yep, that's what you're paying for. And it's like, yeah. And then, of course, the video itself looked better, and then the recording process was that much more smoother, more precise, and all that. So it was really kind of interesting after all these years, as of a couple of years ago, to actually see that happen with my eyes. But regardless of all that, my favorite thing has always been the communication with you guys, right? The communication, the comments. And there's been a lot of a learning process that has been gathered throughout the years, right? And one thing I can tell you firsthand is, like, if there's a piece of content that you don't like doing, and I know this firsthand, trust me, if there's something that you're covering, even though it's what your fans are there for you to cover, if you are like, if it is negative video after negative video after negative video, like, it could really wear you down. I know I touched up on this earlier, but trust me when I tell you, it could really wear you down. It can get to a point to where you can quit YouTube. Now, I've quit a couple times here and there temporarily, and I can tell you that I don't know if it would have made a difference or not if I had a bigger channel. In other words, if I was getting a certain amount of viewership. Because even though I'm not a greedy person by any means, I know the value of $1, and I understand the privilege of being able to record a video that is a video game, essentially, and putting up a piece of content that doesn't necessarily take too long to make. And again, it depends on the content itself, but usually on average, my content doesn't take too long to make. And if I was making a certain amount of money on a regular basis doing it, I don't know if I would have quit. I either would have changed it up, or I would have done something else in relative to that. But I don't know if I would have quit, because, like, it's a really big deal when you start to see, literally before your very eyes, because I've been gaming for 32 years. I started when I was 7 years old in terms of gaming. And I lived in an era to where it's like, it wouldn't even be a thought that you could play video games for a living in any way, shape, or form, whether it's competition, content creation, whatever it is. And now, all these years later, guess what? It is one of the most sought after careers by people, both younger and even older. There are people out there that are doing, like, retired pro wrestlers that are doing podcasts. And it's all on YouTube, because part of it is because of what it is, right? And at the same time, they know that they can make a side living from it, or a full-time living from it. And depending on their popularity and success, it could be a damn good one too. So they see this and they go for it. They give it a try, because it's, there's worth it was worth something, right? In terms of money, so to speak, right? So, and that makes a difference. It really does. No matter who you're talking to, the money factor is always something that makes a person think twice, whether they're greedy or not. They will think twice when it comes to money, especially if there is a potential lots of money to be had, because I can tell you that it is, you know, it's much easier sometimes to, when you're doing this. I mean, it has its own challenges, as I mentioned earlier, but you know, compared to, you know, let's say a job to where you have to work hard labor and you're risking your body, you're beating up your body. You know, maybe there's a few hazards here and there that you have to be careful of or something like that. And I'm just giving one example. There are other examples as well. You know, this is obviously the either option. And I think that's why a lot of YouTubers have sadly and unfortunately have taken the route of like getting to a point to where they're kind of not as genuine as they used to be. And I'm not defending this by any way. I'm not defending this in any way, but it is a little bit, one thing I can do is, whether I defend something or not, whether I side something with not, one thing that I've always been fascinated of, especially now at my age, is I try to have a level of understanding, right? Like I said, you can't judge unless you've been in a person's shoes, right? So it's like, I have no right to judge, so therefore I will try to understand, right? So I think a lot of YouTubers that were once genuine that are no longer genuine, I think this is why they've kind of made that decision. You know, this type of thing, just like everything else, can have an effect on people. You know, it's kind of like the story of, you know, that poor kid, that poor guy who won the lottery, but then upon winning the lottery, he forgets where he came from, right? And he's like a completely different person, or he's changed or whatnot. The money has changed him or her or whatnot. So, and this can happen to anybody, and it doesn't even have to be an insane amount of money. Success isn't just rooted in money. It's also about what you want out of life and what you consider success. It could be anything. It could be weight loss. It could be getting better at a game. It could be, let's say, you know, having a successful relationship, being faithful. I mean, literally, there are endless categories as to what success is and what you set as a standard, right? So, and looking at my channel, for instance, just to give you a prime example, there's two ways to look at it. It's like, yeah, I've been doing it for 9 years. And there are certainly a lot of people that started after me that have been doing it for like half the time that I have, and that are way ahead of me in terms of viewership numbers, consistency numbers, and sub count. Sure, I could look at it that way and I can say, yeah, my channel sucks, or I'm a failure, or blah, blah, blah. Or I can choose to look at it this way and remind myself of one very true fact that still remains true to this day. And that is that most people, the vast majority of people that do YouTube, don't even make it to 100 subs, let 1,000. And I am at almost 2,500. So there's something to be said about that as well. So it's basically a decision. At the end of the day, one person in my life that I know told me, and he's actually a retired Navy SEAL as well. So he actually told me that, and I'm paraphrasing here. He said, for the most part, you know, it's all a decision at the end of the day. You know, you either do or you don't. So basically, you translate that, you put that analogy and that concept into what I just said. I can either choose to believe that my channel and my content sucks and that I'm a complete failure, or I can choose to remind myself of the historic facts that still remain true to this day, that most people will not make it to 100 subs, let 1,000. And here I am at 2.5. So that says something about me as well. So, and again, there are others out there that are like me as well. And I tip my hat to them, because there's one in particular that I have on my mind that's been doing it longer than I have. He's been doing it actually as long as Blame Truth has, and he's nowhere near the numbers of Blame Truth. But does that make him a bad content creator? No, he's very consistent. His stuff is very clean. There's even some humor in there as well. And he does exactly what Blame Truth does. So does that make him a worse content creator? No, not at all. And what I mean, but what Blame Truth does, like in terms of, his style of videos, so to speak, and with even better editing, actually, if you think about it. So, you put all those things together, it's like, again, it just goes to show you that timing, that's another thing. Timing and luck and doing it right are probably the 3 pillars of success on YouTube. About timing, about luck, and it's about doing it right. And I don't think anybody does it completely right, but there are a lot of people that do it better than others, right? And that better, whether it's a better thumbnail, a better way to title your videos, when you upload or whatever it is, those things with consistency add up over time. So if you do something right consistently, it's going to work out for you. If you do something right inconsistently, it may not work out for you. It's kind of like learning how to do a technique correctly versus a technique not correctly. So you can kind of view YouTube as a technique, right? Are you doing it right or are you doing it wrong? And in a lot of ways, that really depends on the creator. And I think one of the things is, number one, you want to do something that you enjoy. At least I would hope somebody would like to do something that they would enjoy. But at the same time, that's not always the case. They used to say back in the day, I remember the guy that actually inspired me to do YouTube, Sandy Ravage, because he was like the first Call of Duty channel that I found on YouTube. And then once I figured out there was an entire community, I started watching him and his old videos. And then I started watching the other community members. And back during that day, like this was a few years before I decided to do my own channel, a lot of YouTubers that I watched back in the day used to say, if you're solely driven by the money, and I'm paraphrasing when I say this in terms of what their wordage was, but they say if you're solely motivated by the money by doing this whole YouTube thing, you shouldn't do it, or 99% of the time you're going to fail. And nowadays, for the most part, that's still true, but there's been a shift in the percentage. That's one thing that I've noticed. There are people out there that have started out, doing this whole YouTube thing, solely for the money. That's why they do it. And everything else is kind of a secondary factor, and yet they've managed to succeed. I don't know too many of them, but I know that it is more possible for that to happen now. But there's also a lot of kind of other things that get put into the mix. So, but yeah, I mean, there's still a big part of me that believes that, for the most part, what those guys said all those years ago still remains true for the vast majority of us to this day. There are special circumstances, absolutely. Like if you're a celebrity, absolutely. It's your channel will likely succeed. And of course, doing it right, so if you have a friend that knows what they're doing and you do the whole YouTube thing together and, you provide the content and then they do the editing, they do the uploading, they do the, the other stuff that you wouldn't know or whatnot. You can have a working relationship that way, and you can literally build an audience that way from your name. And then, of course, the guy that's helping you put your name out there. So you're literally covering both sides. So it's very interesting how YouTube has evolved over the years and how it's literally become so big that it's pretty much, for a lot of people, has replaced cable or TV and stuff like that. A lot of people these days, they just have the internet. And I'm talking apart from streaming services. I'm talking YouTube alone. I know streaming services have become a big deal, both in gaming as well as other forms of media. But as YouTube, think about it for a second. Ask yourself this question. Would you rather have Netflix, for instance, or would you rather have YouTube? Like if you had to choose one or the other. Now, I'm not talking about from a content creation standpoint. I'm talking about from an entertainment standpoint. Would you rather have Netflix or would you rather have YouTube? And for me personally, that's a little bit of a toughie. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people would have a tough way to choose, because obviously Netflix offers something, or and if you don't like Netflix, just replace Netflix with like whatever form of streaming service that you enjoy, whether it's Max or Paramount Plus or whatever, right? Whatever your favorite streaming service is, put YouTube against it, and you have to pick one. I think a lot of people would probably pick YouTube, including the people that don't create content. I think a lot of people would pick YouTube, and it's only getting bigger. So, because content creators out there, I mean, you can literally find everything on YouTube, like everything you want. So it's like content creators have become very, very creative. They've become very versatile. And there are so many different things you can find on this platform that you can't find in other platforms, or in ways that you can't find on other platforms. There's also a reason why these celebrities, despite the fact that they could be very successful financially and stuff like that, a lot of these guys have YouTube channels or whatnot, or something of that nature. And there's a reason for that. It's a part of culture now. YouTube is becoming something that is a lot more common now than what it was even 10 years ago. It wasn't new 10 years ago, but it was still fresh, so to speak. Right now, it's not as fresh as it once was, because more and more people are becoming content creators. And yet the fact still remains that if you go on eBay and you look for, like, let's say an Elgato capture device, you're going to see pages and pages and pages of people that tried doing this YouTube thing and then eventually gave up, right? Because they didn't get anywhere, they weren't growing, and then on top of that, they got tired of it, And again, if you're just doing it for the growth and all that, there's nothing wrong with that. But after a while, a lot of people will give up. A lot of people are impatient. It's not like you could put 6 months of hard work into this thing and then all of a sudden start making a killing. For 99% of the YouTube population, that is not the case. Can that happen with a few people? Absolutely. I know one person in particular, and he's a celebrity. And that's the guy that won the first Tough Enough competition, Maven Huffman. He made it like within 6 months or something like that, give or take. He's got like 300 something K subs right now, which is incredible. It might have even been a year, I'm not sure. But something tells me 6 months, but you get the point. Like, getting to 6-figure sub count, and then as well as view count and stuff like that in a short period of time like that is incredible, whether you're a celebrity or not. But at the end of the day, it does happen here and there. And if you're not a celebrity, there's a less chance of it happening, of course, but it's still possible, but highly unlikely, especially nowadays. But yeah, in terms of me, I honestly have no clue. I don't know. Life is funny that way. Sometimes you find that you enjoy something, and sometimes you just kind of grow apart from it. You kind of grow out of it. Kind of like there's some people that played a lot of video games growing up as kids, and then once they got to a certain age, they just didn't game anymore, and they just grew out of it. And it wasn't for them anymore. And it certainly is possible for that to be YouTube, even for me. So, but at the same time, as long as it remains fun, and as long as there's something that I feel like doing, then it's no big deal for me, especially with the kind of videos that I make that don't necessarily take too much time. And speaking of which, one thing I want to do before I end this video is I got to tip my hat to the content creators out there who literally spend, the hours and hours editing for just one video. And I tip my hat to them, because when you understand editing and you see what they're doing and you see their product come out there and how good it is, like the sound is clean, the gameplay is perfect, they added in some graphics and transitions and some art on screen to match the timing of when they say a certain thing, and the gameplay matches with their words, and like, it is literally art. It really is. And granted, a lot of the big guys, they have editors doing that for them, but a lot of those guys, though, did it themselves first, if that's the kind of content that they were doing. And then they just became so busy that they ended up hiring editors, which was no problem because they were already making a killing anyway. So it's like, yeah, you know, time is money. So it's like, yeah, I'll invest in an editor so that way I can have more time for myself. So I don't, you know, spend 15 hours a day doing this stuff. You know, I can do 7 or 8 hours instead, you know, which is very valuable. So I got to tip my hat to guys like, let's say like Prime Pete, for instance. His, you know, his editing is awesome. As well as like just pretty much everything. I also want to tip my hat to anybody who does live comms. That in and of itself is an art, especially like obviously if you're doing it legitimately, I tip my hat to you. If you're faking live comms, then that doesn't count, obviously. But if you're doing legit live comms, again, I tip my hat. I tip my hat because it does take some time in order for you to reach that certain level to where it doesn't take as much time to produce a video like that like it used to. So obviously as you become a little bit more educated in terms of how it works and what editing software you're using or what streaming service you're using or how, you know, however you're doing it, whether you're using OBS, Streamlabs or whatever, and then you do your live comm and then you edit it the way you do and you're talking while gaming and it's legit and all that kind of stuff, that in and of itself is an art form, really. It really is. So, and also there's also a few content creators out there that I miss, you know. The one that comes to mind is Marka J. You know, he's the only guy that I would watch his videos for just for gameplay. But the reason why I watched his stuff for gameplay was not just because it was good gameplay, but I mean, there's only like a handful, like there's only like 3 guys that I would watch for gameplay. One of them is Ronaldinho, the other one was Marka J, and then the other one was Pwn Stars, right? With Sandy Ravage, I ended up just watching him for his comms whenever he would comm or whenever he'd have like a session with Fick Moley or something like that, you know, before, you know, whatever he's doing now. Same thing with XCal. There's a lot of content creators that I miss. Yeah. So, and of course, you know, when you look at Marka J and the way he used to edit his stuff and everything like that, it was really, you know, it was really, really high quality gameplay videos, not just because of the gameplay itself, but because of how it was edited. So, so yeah, again, I tip my hat to those guys as well. So there's people out there that literally make movie quality or, you know, TV series quality type of videos that can give you that same amount of entertainment, whether it's in or out of video games. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to be able to produce stuff like that, especially for those guys that make weekly videos. You know, content like that is very difficult to produce and very time consuming to produce. And I tip my hat to those guys because it's literally work of art. And putting stuff out like that out there on YouTube is awesome. And the fact that you have so many choices, whether you want to learn how to cook something or whether you want to learn how to draw something or whether you want to be more educated on a particular topic, it's all here. And it's in video form, which gets a lot of people's attention more than, like, let's say, being in a library full of books. Nothing wrong with a library full of books, but I'm just saying, for a lot of people, getting their attention in audio and or video form on a particular subject that they enjoy, especially if that particular subject is presented to them in a certain way that grabs their attention, thanks to the content creator's creativity and editing skills and stuff like that, it's, you know, it's hard to beat YouTube, man. When you consider all those things compared to a Netflix or an HBO Max or whatnot, it's hard. It's hard. You know, nothing compares to YouTube, quite frankly. So, you know, for me, I would choose YouTube. Like if I had to choose between Netflix and YouTube, easily YouTube. So, but yeah, I think I've talked enough. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but I figured since I'm coming up on my 9-year anniversary here in a couple weeks, I just kind of wanted to have this conversation and obviously have it off stream and just kind of have my thoughts be narrowed down and kind of funneled in towards one particular direction, because, you know, sometimes when I have somebody talk to me, it's very easy for me to change my course and go towards what they wanted to talk about, you know, because that's just me. It's kind of like, it's almost like being in a buffet with your favorite foods, you know. It's like you like a little bit of this, you like a little bit of that. You know, it's like I find myself going for this, I'll get a little bit of that, but then my eye catches something else. It's like, ooh, let me try a little bit of this, you know? So it's kind of like that. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much my entire thoughts on this whole YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And in terms of what takes place in the future, you know, only time will tell. It really depends on my mood. Am I expecting to get to a certain point with YouTube? No. But if it does happen to where it becomes like if I were to have a YouTube goal, I would say at best it would be like a part-time thing. Because with me, I know for a fact that doing it full time, I don't want to say it would be impossible, but it would wear me the hell out, you know, mentally more than anything else. Because I enjoy variety. I enjoy, like, I would still keep one of my jobs. You know what I mean? Or even both. You know, or I might just dial it down a little bit so that way I can fit this in a little bit more. You know what I mean? So that way I can have a, you know, 33.3% time investment in all three jobs or whatnot. So if I were to have a goal for YouTube for myself, is for it to be like a part-time thing. Yeah, like a part-time, like in terms of part-time income. In terms of what I'm already doing that. But obviously, if there was an income put into it, I will say, and I mentioned this earlier, is that it would probably be a little bit more consistent because, again, even though I'm not greedy, money is still a motivator. So it would actually fuel my creativity and get me to a point to where it's like I'm gonna see how far I could take this thing, so to speak. So, but of course, without getting corrupt, which is again something that a lot of people will fall for. So, but that's a line that I do not want to cross. One thing to be influenced by financial success, but it's a whole other thing if you sacrifice your integrity to become successful. You know, and that's where that line is drawn. So, a sellout is definitely what you don't want to be. There's a few things you don't want to be in life, and a sellout is definitely not one of them. At least not for me. So, but anyway, those are my thoughts on the entire thing. And for anybody that managed to listen through the entire thing, or if you got to a certain point, please write it down in the comment section below. If there's anything that you particularly like, if there's something, a part of this conversation that really spoke volumes to you or whatever it is, I would really like to know what that was. Because, you know, again, I'm very interested in people's points of view. So, but with that being said, I'm going to end it here. Thank you for those of you guys that have been sticking around. Some of you have been here from the very beginning, and I want to say thank you very much. Some of you guys are very recent, and some of you guys are somewhere in the middle. So, whichever compartment in this boat that you're on, I want to say thank you for being here. And as long as this continues to be fun, you know, as a fun hobby, then as long as nothing in real life gets in the way, then I don't see a reason for stopping. You know, but at the same time, that doesn't give guarantees either, right? So I'll leave it at that. So anyway, thank you again for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.